I've been investing in real estate for 22 years, and I still think about a few of the deals I didn't do, or a couple of properties I sold too soon, and one decision that cost me years of progress. These are my biggest real estate regrets, and I'm sharing them with you so you don't have to learn the hard way like I did. So to share these regrets, I'm going to tell you three simple stories. And the first story is about a deal that got away, one that I did not buy. And it was all the way back when I was 25 years old, 2005. And to give you some context, I'd just been in the business a couple of years. I started investing in real estate in 2003. I graduated college in 2002. So I was in my early mid-20s, did not have a lot of capital, but I was hustling. I was out there talking to people, sending out letters, wanting to buy properties. And some of these properties I would wholesale, and I had a business partner, so a 50-50 business partner. So we would just flip them to other people, meaning we would get them under contract, maybe do a little bit of work or clean up, and then sell them to another investor almost as is. Other times we'd fix them up and resell them. But I was very interested in rental properties and owning these long-term rentals because I'd heard that's where the wealth comes and the cash flow comes. And I sent out some letters to some multifamily unit owners in my hometown in Clemson, South Carolina. And I got a call from a super nice gentleman, somebody I really respect and went out to lunch several times with and really admired because he had been in business for 40 years, was also a Clemson fan like I was, Clemson Tigers, Clemson football, and he had accumulated some rental properties. And there's this one particular rental property. He said, "Hey, Chad, I'm thinking about selling this one. I've owned it actually, he built it, and it's beautiful brick buildings in the best location in my town in Clemson, near downtown, up on a hill, 5 different buildings, 20 units total." And we discussed them. I looked at them with him, went out to lunch a couple times, and he basically told me, I think I'd part with him for $1 million. So $1 million, 20 units, that is $50,000 per unit. And back at the time, the rents were probably $450, $495. I can't remember the exact number, but they weren't like a screamer of a deal, but kind of, a little bit below the 1% rule, but in an excellent location. So what did I do? I thought about it. I said, let me work on this. I didn't have any concept of how to come up with $1 million or to come up with $200,000 or $300,000 in a down payment. It felt very risky to me at that point. And I went to a mentor of mine, and this just wasn't his type of deal. He liked kind of lower price properties. And, he didn't really give me like a green light that he would invest with me. And so I was kind of stuck, and I made him an offer. It was kind of a weak offer where I would have said, "Would you be willing to sell or finance it to me if I paid you $50,000 down? And then the other $950,000, I would make payments to you over time." He was nice about it, but he said, "No, I don't think that's what I want to do." But looking back on this, so I did not buy the deal, passed on it. Many years have passed, and I want to give you the kind of the fast forward of this building, this best location in town. It had the best zoning. It was another thing I didn't mention earlier. In addition to being this great location, it had like multifamily dense zoning and very convenient to a lot of things. Well, this building is still owned, I believe, by the family or part of the family of the person I talked to. He's since passed away, but they've fixed the building up. The current rents are about $2,000 per month on these buildings. They've added a half bathroom or an extra bathroom. So they have 2 bedroom, 2 bath each. And those buildings, if I owned that and were to sell it to another investor, it would probably sell for $300,000 to $350,000 per unit. So this is like $6.5 to $7 million. If I sold it to another investor, that's just someone who wants to buy it for cash flow. So $1 million 20 years ago, $6.5, $7 million to another investor, or I could fix it up and sell each unit individually as a condo, do what's called a condo conversion, and it would probably be worth $8.5 million. So would have been a massive growth. I would have had to invest some money in that deal and find the money to fix it up, but a big miss an opportunity. And for me, it was because I couldn't come up with the financing. And more than that, it was really about my lack of creativity. And there were people who I could have done that deal with if I would have found other people to put up the capital and I put the deal together. There's ways to syndicate deals. There's ways just to find partners. There's somebody out there who had $200,000 or $300,000. And so my regret there is not being bold enough to just go figure it out. As an entrepreneur, sometimes you just gotta make that leap and figure it out. Put it under contract. Figure out a way when you got the deal under contract and you have 14 days to get the financing contingency released. You figure out a way. That's the way a lot of entrepreneurs do. I didn't do that and still regret it. It's a painful lesson. It's a beautiful building that somebody else owns, but I've learned that lesson. So the second story of my biggest real estate regret is sort of the opposite of the first one. This is one that I bought or I had under contract and then I sold it, but I sold it too soon. So let me tell you kind of the story of this one. It is in a very similar location, actually the same town of Clemson, probably even better location, even closer to the football stadium and some other things that are really in demand in our town. And this is a single family house. I sent out letters again, kind of a theme here. I got a call from the seller who it inherited, it owned it for a long time, and we got along well. I got it under contract to buy at the time for $95,000. So simple 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, 1,500 square foot brick on a decent sized lot. And the price of $95,000 I'd also have to do some repairs to it. I was thinking 25 to $30,000 in repairs, plus maybe another 5,000 in holding and closing costs. So let's just call it $130,000. The property at the time was probably worth 150 to 160. So not like an excellent flip. I could have made a little bit of money flipping the house, but not, maybe $20,000 at most. And I also had to find a partner. We had been buying a lot of other properties, and this was actually a year before the last deal. So I didn't have a lot of money to buy properties. We're just flipping. And so we had to find a partner to help us put up the money to buy the property. But as soon as we closed on the property, I talked to a contractor, somebody who's going to help fix up the property. And I just mentioned in passing, we might be willing just to flip it as is. And he was interested and said, well, what would you sell it for? And I basically decided to sell it to him at a price that we made $15,000 as is. We didn't do anything to it. And just within a couple weeks, we sold the property, made $15,000. Now that seems pretty good, right? I'm in my early 20s, 24 years old. I make $15,000. My business partner and I do. We put that money in the bank. We needed money. But the fast forwarding of that deal, like the amount of wealth we would have made if we figured out a way to keep it. So I'm pretty sure I could have brought in either the partner who we had on board to buy it with us, or another partner. They might have even given us, $15,000 for 50% of that deal, and then we could have held it. And today that property is kind of hard to guess because there's not a lot of sales in that area. But it worth $150,000 21 years ago. It's probably worth $500,000, $600,000 or so today. And they just don't go on the market very much, very, very much in demand. So a very solid appreciation. The property would have stayed rented really easily because there's always people wanting to rent that kind of property. So it would have been one of my best buy and hold properties. Now, I don't regret surviving because I was able, I have some friends in the real estate business who were flipping houses who went out of business because they didn't have enough cash flow. So somebody told me once, never go out of business making a profit. So we made a profit, but what we did is we went after the pennies. We went after the nickels instead of holding for the long run, for the buy and hold deal. I've made much, much more money by not selling properties than I have making the quick buck. And that's become my philosophy lately, the small, mighty investor, holding properties patiently, being the tortoise instead of the hare, and just holding properties. And you make a lot of money tax efficiently and build a lot of wealth by keeping. This is one of the deals that taught me that in a real way. So the third story is not about a specific deal, but it's more about a strategy, a way that I implemented my real estate investing strategy to try to achieve my goal. Because you see, back in the beginning, and probably all throughout my real estate career, I had a goal of a certain amount of cash flow. And I wanted to have cash flow coming in passively or semi-passively so I could do what matters. That's the theme of my show. I got on my t-shirt here. I wanted to travel. I wanted to do all these things. And so I was very focused on cash flow, understandably, because that's what you have to have cash flow in order to pay your bills and be able to do some of the things you want to do. But here was the problem. I started doing a lot of deals that I thought would make me the cash flow that I could basically stack up the cash flow in order to eventually have financial freedom. So it kind of went like this. If I buy this $20,000, $30,000 pretty cheap property because the rents on that property after I put $20,000 into it. So let's say I had $40,000, $50,000 in this property and it rents for $700 or $800 per month. Really good deal, right? Better than the 1% rule. That'll make a lot of cash flow. That's how I'm going to achieve my goals. Well, on paper, it looked pretty good. I would make a couple $100 a month in cash flow. And my goal was to stack up a bunch of those properties, 200 plus 200 plus 200. If I put a bunch of those together, maybe if I had 50 properties times 200, that would be $10,000 per month. That would be the math that made sense to me. The problem was I chased these cheaper properties, these cash flow properties that were, the reason they were cheap was because they were in areas that people were not as interested in. They weren't as in demand. They weren't growing as much as some of the other areas, like the other two deals I showed you, just told you about in Clemson. Those were the areas that were growing, population was growing, in demand. But I mainly try to buy rental properties in these other areas, these nearby towns. They call them the old mill hills. They used to be textile mills in our area. And that's where I could find cheap properties. The problem was those weren't growing in value. And so, and also the other problem was these are old properties. So that $200 in cash flow I thought I was making would really get evaporated here and there, be these huge roller coasters of cash flow, because then I'd have a $5,000 capital expense replacing some electrical system, or the roof needed to be replaced, or I found out the foundation had issues and that cost $10,000 to fix. So you can't make up these $10,000 repairs every few years with $200 per month cash flow. That's $2,400 per year, $2,400. The math didn't work. And even when it did work, the opportunity cost was I could have been buying a little bit higher quality properties that didn't have as much cash flow on the front end. But if I fixed my mortgage over the long run, I would have, set amount of cash flow today, but it would get better and better and better over time as the rents went up. And then I would also build a ton of wealth because the price of that property went up. I put a certain down payment in the beginning and the price went up over time. And so the formula for building wealth is what I'm talking about here. I thought I was going to get financially free by stacking up a bunch of cash flow. And eventually that could work, right? You could pay those properties off and not, I still own some of those properties, but I spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of negotiation skills, and wasted a lot of time on opportunities that weren't quite as good as I could have been buying if I would have stretched a little bit more, maybe brought in some partners to buy some of these more expensive properties. And I spent probably 7-8 years kind of going down that path, even through the Great Recession of 2008, 9, and 10. It wasn't until like 2014, 15, and 16. So I'd been in the business almost 10 years that I really kind of grasped that idea of kind of moving up to higher quality properties. And then there's even more money to be made there. And that's when things really took off. Not a coincidence that in 2016, we kind of recovered from the Great Recession, kind of sold some of these cheaper properties that we had bought, at least some of them. And we started buying some higher quality properties that really added a lot of fuel to our wealth building fire. And ultimately having a certain amount of wealth that we could then turn into cash flow was the transfer point. That was the point where we could actually achieve financial freedom. And so I still preach that a lot today. That's one of the big lessons that has for me, was focusing on wealth building and then grow that wealth and then turn that into cash flow instead of starting with chasing cash flow and trying to turn that into financial freedom. Big distinction, but one I learned from these properties that I bought over the years. So let me review these big regrets. The first story I learned about thinking boldly and using creative financing, like using other people's money to do a deal. And then if I get a piece of that big deal, I can make a lot of money, but I had to think outside the box. I was not thinking big enough on that first deal. The second deal that I missed, or that I sold too early, I learned about buy and hold investing. The power of just being patient as the tortoise in the buy and hold game can make you a lot more money than just flipping it in the short run. And then the third deal, I really learned about strategy. It was a series of deals that I focused on cash flow, but I really, if I had it do over again, I'd be focused more on wealth building. And I probably could have done fewer deals and made just as much money, just as many results, and probably done it sooner if I'd focused on higher quality properties that I could add value to and increase the wealth in my bank account. Now, the story here is that everybody has regrets. I have regrets. I'm sure you have regrets too. Regrets at their best are teaching moments. They're painful. You miss out on a bunch of money. And because of that, that drives that lesson into you. So there's two ways to learn. You can learn from your own regrets. So I suggest going back and thinking about your own business, your own real estate investing. What are the things that you've done that you regret? And what lesson can you learn from them? And then the second way you can learn is from other people's regrets. So you've been watching this YouTube video. I hope you've learned a lot from it. And I'll tell you one thing I didn't regret over the 22 years I've been investing in real estate is I invested a lot of time and a lot of money in mentors and classes and education. I'm kind of an education junkie. And so I've learned a ton. And there's a bunch of things I did well over the last 22 years because I had mentors and teachers and classes I was going to constantly learning. And so that's one of the things I do. I spend a lot of time on this YouTube channel, on these podcast episodes, but I teach in something called Rental Property Mastery is a private community where every single week I do one-on-one coaching with people. And so we have discussions, we have real-time feedback as people are looking at deals, and I can supply some of the lessons I have. And then the community members of other small and mighty investors, we have a max of 300 people in the community. We're about 255 right now. And we have other people who give each other support. So if you're interested in achieving financial freedom and you want a community of people to help you not regret as much and learn lessons from other people, check it out. You can go to coachcarson.com/RPM to learn more about it and to apply to be a member. And if you like these episodes where I share my lessons, my mistakes, my pain that you can learn from instead of having to do it yourself, my next episode is one I think you'll find interesting. It's called I Spent $12,650 on an HVAC for my rental property. So a heating and air unit. And I share 8 lessons that I learned about heating and air units, but also about maintenance, about getting bids. And so if you're anyone who has spent a lot of money or you're worried about spending a lot of money in maintenance and repairs on your rental property, that's definitely one to check out. Have a good conversation with Matt, the lumberjack landlord. Check that out by clicking on the thumbnail above me here, or you can click on the link in the YouTube and the podcast description below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.